Donald Trump's Secretary of State Marco Rubio was confirmed unanimously by his former Senate colleagues very early in January. Yesterday, some of those same senators lambasted him on everything from the administration's failure to pressure Israel over its destruction of Gaza, to renditioning people to a Salvadoran gulag, to locking up college students for writing op-eds.
Clearly, you don't care about the Fifth Amendment right to due process, and you don't care about the First Amendment either, since you've been very busy snatching students off of college campuses for exercising their right to free speech. Our nation has seen times like this before, especially during the Red Scare and Palmer raids. Like the McCarthy-era witch hunts of the 1950s, your campaign of fear and repression is eating away at foundational values of our democracy. Back then, it took one voice, Attorney Joseph Welch, to cut through the hysteria with the simple question that marked the beginning of the end of that shameful era. He asked Senator McCarthy, "Have you no sense of decency?" And I would ask you the same, Secretary Rubio. You have shown through your words and your actions what the answer is. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democrat of Maryland, is a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, which held that hearing with Secretary of State Rubio, and he joins us now. It's good to have you on, Senator.
Good to be with you, Chris.
I want to talk about a few topics. One of the things you said over the weekend, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's CBS, you said that the U.S. is complicit in the starvation of the people of Gaza. I want to start with just a question about what should our government be doing right now to ensure that there is not mass starvation in Gaza?
Well, Chris, the most basic thing that the Trump administration should be doing, President Trump, Secretary Rubio, is publicly calling upon the Netanyahu government to immediately allow humanitarian aid into Gaza and to safely reach the people who are starving to death. You know, for 78 days, there was a total blockade. We didn't even see any acknowledgement from the Trump administration about what was happening. Finally, a few days ago, Donald Trump acknowledges, yes, people are starving in Gaza, but did not combine that with the second half of the message, which is, Prime Minister Netanyahu and your government, let the food in and stop starving millions of people.
I've seen some reporting in the Israeli press, which I read pretty closely, that Netanyahu's talked about calls with American senators, specifically Republican senators. And I guess I want to say this to you, and if people are watching this happen and feel like they're losing their mind, like, how can this happen? These are innocent children. Does it matter if they call their senator? Does it matter if they call their representative to tell them they feel that way, to then put pressure on the Israeli government?
Yes, people should be calling their representatives, their House members, their Senate to say to the U.S. government, Congress, executive branch, call upon the Netanyahu government immediately to not just let a little trickle of food across the border, but actually get it to the people who are starving, make sure that the aid workers can deliver it without themselves getting killed. You know, Chris, we voted on a resolution in the Senate just last night. Senator Peter Welch offered it. I was a co-sponsor with him. It was very simple. It acknowledged the suffering of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. It said the United States should work to release the hostages and end the war. It was blocked by Republican senators. So, look, if they're quietly calling up Netanyahu and telling him to let the aid in, good. And yes, people should be calling. But my read of what happened is everybody in the world, except the Trump administration, weighed in and said, you've got to deliver the food. And the Europeans were especially vocal. Pope Leo said something. The people who were conspicuously absent from that were people like Secretary Rubio and President Trump.
Last question on this, and I want to ask about El Salvador. But I had you on the program the night that Netanyahu and Trump did that joint appearance in which Trump announced that we were going to own the Gaza Strip and maybe forcibly or voluntarily displace the civilian population there. Today, Netanyahu, in talking about his plan for Gaza, said that it's all towards implementing Trump's plan on Gaza. This is what he said. The Times of Israel saying it represents the first time the U.S. president's plan for moving Gaza civilians out of the Strip has been presented as an Israeli demand for ending the war. Is that come as a surprise to you?
It does not, Chris, and I'm glad you raised this essential point. I have with me a Haaretz article, an Israeli newspaper article, headline, Finance Minister Smotrich, we are destroying everything that remains in Gaza. The world isn't stopping us. And what he points out is the plan is, first of all, to effectively ethnically cleanse Palestinians out of the northern part of Gaza, send them all to the southern part of Gaza, and then he says that they can then implement Donald Trump's plan.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's plan is to forcibly displace Palestinians, which does amount to ethnic cleansing.
You have raised a legal issue with what to me is a sort of the kind of moral abomination of the rendering into a Salvadoran prison of 200 plus migrants, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You and Ed Markey have noted that the U.S. taxpayer dollars are actually paying for this in the form of $6 million, I believe is the price tag, being paid by American public dollars to the government in El Salvador, and have questioned whether that's actually even legal. Explain.
Well, because these are taxpayer dollars going to the Bukele government in El Salvador. And remember, President Bukele called himself the world's coolest dictator. Mm-hmm. But these are taxpayer dollars going to El Salvador for the purpose of taking people off the streets of the United States in violation of their constitutional due process rights and locking them up in notorious prisons. So these are American taxpayer dollars going to prevent people who reside in the United States from getting their Fifth Amendment due process rights recognized. So this is an outrageous scheme. We think it is an illegal expenditure. And we're also going to be, holding the government of El Salvador accountable. But for God's sakes, right now we just need for the Trump administration to obey the 9-0 Supreme Court ruling to facilitate his return, since they've already admitted he was wrongfully deported.
How confident are you that eventually is what they're going to do? We are in a weird liminal space now. What is your read on where things stand now?
Well, right now they're stonewalling the federal district court judge in the case, Judge Zinnes, claiming they can't provide information because of the State Secret Act, which is just a total subterfuge for continuing to flout the Supreme Court order. In fact, the judge has said that their explanation for invoking the State Secret Act is not adequate, doesn't stand the smell test. So we'll have to see, but this could be the case. The why that this is so important, not only because of the man Abrego Garcia, but because it implicates all of our Fifth Amendment rights. And it could be the first one where we find out whether they will openly defy the Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, Maryland, thank you for your time tonight, sir.